Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Father's Day episode of House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 1. We know scripted TV, and we are here to talk about the episode that we just watched live after it aired. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I am joined this week by Josh Wigler. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing well, Taran. Sad that Grace was unable to grace us with her presence here for this first episode. I do have it on good authority from Grace. She has already side-chatted me to say she thought this was a very cheesy premiere, Taran. A cheesy episode of House of the Dragon.
As well, perhaps?
Certainly bloody.
Bloody and cheesy, yeah.
Yeah. This is a tradition, I think, is, watch the episode. We're going to spoil the episode. We watched the episode. We're going to talk about it. I think that this is a tradition, Taran, that the Game of Thrones franchise loves to do something insanely messed up on Father's Day and Mother's Day. Like, I feel like there were several versions of, like, Daenerys Targaryen has some sort of horrible medicine served to her on Mother's Day. Like, this feels like this has happened before. This was savage. This is a pretty savage start to season 2 of House of the Dragon.
A son for a son. We are here. We're going to be talking about the season all season long. We will be live after every episode of House of the Dragon throughout season 2, discussing, reacting, and
crying, laughing,
perhaps crying.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk through. Obviously, we'll be spoiling the episodes. We will not be spoiling things from the book perspective, although I have read the book and can occasionally give some extra insight in that regard. We will not be spoiling things for you.
I think we could observe where departures were made, perhaps.
Yes.
As in this episode, there were definitely some departures that were made. I think maybe is this a controversial statement, Taran, that the end of this episode, which was so horrible and troubling, is like extraordinarily worse in the book. That like this could have been a lot worse. If you thought that the end of this episode of House of the Dragon was like really bad, which it was, someone at HBO was like, all right, okay, listen, real quick. I know, Ryan Condal, you're really loyal to George. You like to take all of the words from George's book and put them on screen, and that's a great instinct. Maybe this time, rein it in. Just rein it in a little bit. Because, yeah, this could have been really, really gnarly. It was still pretty messed up to get to, I think, what is probably the biggest book moment. One of the most anticipated book moments from this period that's being adapted for House of the Dragon, would you say?
I would say so. It's got a name, so that's always a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, like the Red Wedding is called the Red Wedding. This is called Blood and Cheese.
Blood and Cheese. Blood and Cheese is what it's called, named after those two absolute doofuses. These idiots, these morons, these very bad people. These people who I believe Mike Bloom, who is commanding the RHAP scripted Twitter account, said tonight were the Westerosi Wet Bandits, which I feel like, I don't know what the Wet Bandits would have actually done if they'd had like 5 more minutes with Kevin McAllister. So I can't say if it's a fair comparison or not.
I mean, on a very kind of like practical level, I get it, right? Like if I had to choose between Aemond, with the eye patch and the massive dragon and little baby boy, I'm definitely fighting the little baby boy.
I'll fight there's something about 100 baby-sized Aemonds, but I don't have the energy on a Sunday night to fully take us there. Taran, season 2 has premiered. We're gonna get at all of the details, all the bloody details. We got to talk about the politics of Westeros and where things stand at this point. But how did you feel about it? How did you feel about the return to House of the Dragon here?
I thought this was great. I think for me, it was it was exactly what I wanted it to be, which was this kind of slow build escalation, where they really made sure that we sat on the events that occurred. I think that a lot of television nowadays, they love to just do things and move on, and it doesn't really have much impact. They really brought me back to where I was at the end of season 1,
Yeah.
where Rhaenyra has just lost a child. And I felt the weight of that, and I loved the scene where Jacaerys comes in and he's trying to like give the report from the job that he had, and it
I'm
just
also trying to listen to be like, okay, I want to make sure I got the details of what you've accomplished, right? I think you conquered the veil. That's pretty dope. But also you're about to
got the veil.
cry. Yeah, got the veil. Listen, we lost Luke. We got the veil.
Yes. So I love that. Like it was important to feel the weight of these things and to continue to sort of introduce us to all of the characters and where they are right now in season 2. And I felt like it did all of that really well while building tension and leading to this very dramatic, climax here at the end of the episode.
Yeah. We're doing this live, of course, on the We Know Scripted YouTube page. And Probst, who I don't think is the Probst, is in the chat. And said, this didn't feel like an event to me in the same way as the Red Wedding. It could have been more iconic without being gratuitously horrific, is Probst's take on the ending of this episode that I think is a really anticipated moment. I think one of the big differences between a moment like Blood and Cheese and some of the other, really bombastic, huge Game of Thrones twists in the past is, Darren, this is the first episode of the season. They ended the season premiere with 7 more subsequent hours to go with this really, really horrific event. I think it's by nature going to feel very different from like one of those late stage Game of Thrones twists.
Yeah, and I think that it's not meant to be an event, if that makes like it's meant to be very much like, oh no,
Yeah.
like that was not good. It's not really meant to be something that's celebrated, and like for instance, the Red Wedding wasn't celebrated, but like as a moment in the story, it really means something. And it had that shock value. I think this is more meant to be like just disturbing. Just
Yeah.
like this, oh God, this is not great.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of great interviews out there with the people involved in the show. I saw one, I think it was Variety with Ryan Condal, and he's talking about how the goal of constructing the scene was for these last 20 minutes or so of the episode to feel like a heist gone wrong. These two people have a target. They totally biff it, and it just goes horrifically worse and worse. And the feeling of dread should be that something catastrophic is about to happen. And that the choice that they make is that the perspective only finally shifts once the deed is being done. And now you're Helena. Like now it's Helena holding the other kid and going out and seeking Alicent. So whether or not it worked for everybody, it seems like it was, pretty thoughtfully designed. This is one of those moments that if you're going to adapt Fire and Blood into the show that we've been watching for now a season, going into 2 seasons, this is one of those moments that like the really like nose to the books fans are like, all right, Mr. Condal, how you going to do Blood and Cheese? Curious to know. And it's less about like, I'm excited for Blood and Cheese, which feels like a really screwed up thing to say and probably not the right way to frame it. But I think that Blood and Cheese is sort of this note of like, can you sell this really horrible, very necessary turning point for all of the story? I mean, you all can imagine what this might do as we're on the precipice of war. How can you like still render that with like a level of shock and some taste in there, like some restraint as well? I'm a fan of how they did it. It was messed up, and this was a hard one to do, and I think that they did it pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. We talked about it a little bit in season 1, or at least like I thought about it during season 1, where I was wondering, like, are we going to be introduced to these children ahead of time? Because it's certainly, I think, more impactful if you know them as characters, if they've sort of like existed in your mind
Yeah.
in this world for a little longer. They had to do the work of introducing who they were in the same episode that the son eventually gets murdered. And so I think that was asking a lot, and
They did a lot of work by making a Lannister almost have to do bore on the floor, though. Like they like
true.
typically they're lying on the floor, but they were about to go bore on the floor. The
Mhm.
piggyback ride that I really wish that poor little Jaharis got that piggyback ride.
You know, it would have been something.
Yeah.
At least listen, you know what's coming. Give him the
Give him
ride.
the
Like,
ride. Give him the ride. I think that the show could have given him the ride. The show knows. You give him a ride. Let him have that last.
how do you think the Lannister is gonna feel when he hears about this? Be like,
I mean,
oh,
I think,
that's such a tragedy. I'm
yeah,
so sad that that boy that took my
yeah.
King's
I used to
Council
give him
thingy
rides.
fall.
I used to give him rides. We played horse. I was the horse. I was the dragon. Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna feel particularly great about this. Very. The trailer for the rest of the season and what looks to be next episode looks very intense for everyone who stuck around to watch all of that. So yeah, but it's the whole week leading up to the premiere, Taryn, has felt sort of exciting and energizing as not a lapsed Game of Thrones person, but for all of us. I don't know how many of us are just like thinking about Game of Thrones all the time in that year and a half, 2 years in between seasons. The last couple of weeks have really felt like such a ramp up. And this week, living in New York City, Taryn, there's been declarations for Team Green, Team Black by restaurants, by buildings, the Empire State Building,
By
the
the
Brooklyn
Roy
Bridge.
family,
The Roy family declared for the Green. The Empire
which
State
tracks.
Building. The Empire State Building declared for the Green as well. And I was actually driving on the Long Island Expressway today, Taryn, and my passenger in the side of the car said, "What's that on the Empire State Building?" And it looked like King Kong was up there. That's the house, like HBO money, Max money. They're pouring it in, and I feel like the enthusiasm is popping off. It's been a really fun week to be a House of the Dragon fan.
Yes, and I think that, like, in particular, hyping up the Team Red, Team Green, Team Black, debate, was was an interesting choice because of what we knew was coming in episode 1,
Yes.
where it's
Yes.
like, this is, like, a lot of people that are unashamedly Team Black, I think, just watched this episode and were like, "Ooh,
Yeah, let
guys."
me ask you a question, Taryn, because there's going to be people who are only experiencing this as an audio medium, but for those who are watching live alongside us, as this will be happening on Sunday nights, Taryn, our background for this video podcast is hashtag Team Black House of the Dragon over here. I see as well you're wearing a black shirt,
I mean, I couldn't
Taryn.
possibly.
Taryn. Taryn, how does it feel? I don't want to like say you're being tasteless, especially now that you're officially a taste maker. But
Mm.
like, does it feel a little soon to be wearing black right now, given what Team Black just did?
Listen, there are some elements of our team that are that go a little bit rogue sometimes,
Yeah,
okay? But we cannot be held responsible
yeah,
for the actions of a rat catcher.
sure.
And listen,
Taryn, don't mind.
a
I just have to
guy.
mute myself real quick. If you don't mind, filibustering would be.
Oh wow! Oh no! Oof. All right. For the listeners, Josh is currently putting on a green sweatshirt. A, I mean, I traitorous. I mean, listen, I don't want to say it,
House
but like,
Wigler has declared for the Greens. Death to the usurper.
they are the
That's
usurpers.
what happened in this episode to Team Green was not okay, Taryn. And I'm not going to be on the side of history that goes around slaying babes in the night. Officially, Josh Wigler and Wombat Nation declaring for the Greens.
No, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Listen, you guys
also,
started it.
we'll
You
just
guys
make
started it.
sure to just adjust the background of this video podcast accordingly. So that's where we stand, Taryn. That's where we stand.
Listen, we'll win you back. It's coming. You know, one moment
Yeah.
of darkness. You
That's just a
know,
mistake. Yeah.
just one thing. Just wait. Just
Yeah.
wait until the Greens start doing stuff again. you're gonna be ashamed of this. You're gonna
Oh
you're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
you're gonna
yeah,
have to release a Notes app apology for this
yeah,
podcast.
yeah. Should I like preemptively take this back? Did I
Yes.
make? Am I gonna like look back at this and feel like I'd really, Could you just filibuster again, real quick? Actually,
Oh boy. I think we've done it. I think I think we've got Josh back on. Like, this is the season, right? Like this is the season. We are trying to figure out how to win the
oh, I thought
loyalty
about it further. It seems like a bad idea. Yeah,
of the Seven Kingdoms and
yeah,
get them to declare for one side or the other.
yeah. It's just one episode. I need to see a little bit more. I need to see a little bit more.
Mhm.
But what do you think about where things stand leaving this premiere as far as landscape of the war is concerned, Taran?
It definitely feels like, we had this inciting incident for Team Black. We now have one for Team Green. And all of the restraint that had been shown from both sides feels like surely now it's just not going to be there quite as much.
Yeah.
There were already warhounds on either side pushing to escalate things further, and the hands holding them back, I think are going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think that we got some really great content from both sides of the line. Like I really appreciated that the episode is spread throughout so many different territories, but not like an oppressive amount of storylines, that you get a decent amount going on in Team Green. There's a lot going on with Alicent and Sir Kristen Cole, for instance, here. Believe it's Mary in the chat who said that Kristen is the only one here giving rides these
Boy.
days, out here on the King's Guard. I thought that the Green storyline was really good this week. And like jokes aside, I definitely trend towards Team Black. I love Queen Rhaenyra. But I thought that the stuff that was happening in King's Landing, especially feeling the episode arcing towards Blood and Cheese, that felt really, really well done. Like Larys is plotting. Larys has his fingers in every single pot. Aemond, it feels so dangerous. He just feels increasingly dangerous. The bromance between Aemond and Kristen is very interesting in the light of Kristen and Alicent, for instance. And the Otto angst, the Otto Hightower angst. I'm really living for Otto Hightower angst right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like there's a lot of intricate politicking going on Team Green, and I do wonder, between Blood and Cheese and kind of like them getting kind of the more interesting content so far. I do wonder if we start to see more of a shift to Team Green overall. I think the thing is that just Team Black is just a little more rootable.
Yeah.
Those boys have a little more humanity to them. That said, I like that we started seeing a little bit more of like a complete picture of Aegon, and I still like the decision at the end of season 1 for Aemond about how it was kind of a mistake, perhaps, that he is now seemingly owning, not admitting that it was a mistake. But that I think adds so much depth to his character.
Yeah.
And then, this sort of like instinct that Aegon has to sort of like give to the people is like, oh, at least he's got that going for him, I guess.
Yeah, but this is a far cry. I feel like we're like really swinging away from. Didn't they show us in season 1 that King Aegon was like huge into like the secret like kid fight club in King's Landing? Like
Listen, people have layers.
he frequents
Yeah.
like the underground. So he's like suddenly now he's like, oh, I'll restore all your goats, every last one of them. We'll replenish the entirety of your farm. Is the same guy as I like to go to Kid Fight Club. Fight Club Junior is the place to be. So I
That's
feel like it's a tale of two Aegons, but maybe that's the Targaryen thing, right? Flip a coin.
Well, and that's honestly like what I think I like about it, which is that,
Yeah.
yeah, he can be both of those things, and he should be, because for him to be cartoonishly evil in every circumstance, I think diminishes him as a character.
Yeah.
To see him have these kind of instincts to help others, and maybe they weren't exactly just like for the sake of helping others. Maybe it was a lot of just like I want them to like me.
Yeah, sure.
But
Yeah.
I again I think it adds to the character and seeing him like delight in watching his son do things and then immediately go to like now I'm gonna be power hungry and like make you give him a pony ride.
I think that there was a lot of hard work that the show has had to accomplish over the course of I think that if the entirety of House of the Dragon ends up being really successful critically, right? Like if at the end of this everybody feels like this was a worthwhile experience, I'm glad we followed up Game of Thrones and all of that, then I think some of the people who maybe don't look so kindly on some of season one, and one of the big season one critiques was the pacing. I think that people will look back on that more with, if not more fondness, than I think maybe with feeling more impressed by the show, because they had all of these various characters played by multiple different actors across the run, and it's not until the last 3 episodes, 2 or 3 episodes, I think, that Tom Glencarney, who plays Aegon now, like he was following up the Finn Wolfhard kid, and now he has to make the character his own. And Aemond is such a flashy character and has such a big moment by design at the end of season one that is going to be he's going to have a little bit of a leg up in terms of immediate recognition. But the actor who's playing Aegon has a lot of work to do in a fairly limited space last season. And I really do appreciate that he showed up here kind of feeling like more of a full formed character. And I think a lot of that backbone of season one is a big piece of why.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this episode did a lot to help set up Team Green a bit more
Yeah.
as like an established side, and one that we will, potentially be following for a little while. And if anything, like we spent a lot of time obviously building up Team Black last season, and their content was a little sparse this episode.
Yeah.
They don't have as much like political inner workings going on over there. And I think that's okay for now because I think we're quickly going to be moving into like going to war territory.
Yeah,
So,
it seems like it. What was the most interesting thing that happened with Team Black for you this week, Taryn?
I mean, I think right away I was really, really happy that we started up in the north.
That was pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
That felt like almost like the Better Call Saul guys used to call this schmuck bait. It felt like a little schmuck baity of like, look what we've got, Castle Black. You're in the north. There's the Starks. It's Winterfell. And as it was happening, I was just like, I'm a schmuck. Bait me. I loved it. I loved it. I was so happy to be on top of the wall. I felt like Sam again. I felt like I was with Jon and Tyrion pissing off the edge of the world. It was great. And then we were there for like 5 minutes, and it's like, Mom called, you have to go home. And that was a bummer. That was a bummer. I really would have loved to have stayed in the north for a bit.
hmm Yeah, I mean, should we pull up our map?
Yeah, we do have a map, don't we? You've got that handled, Taryn?
Yeah, well, let's pull up a map here.
We've got a little
So
war map here.
yeah, so the idea here, we want to try to like give you a little bit of a showcase, a visual aid if you're
Yeah.
watching along of where people are over the course of the episode, on a map that we can
Yeah.
kind of track here. So we see that Jace here, he starts up in the north. He goes up to the wall. That's where he's hanging out up there. And
Yep.
they've declared for Team Black in this meeting.
Yeah.
Cregan Stark has promised
How
a
long does it
new.
seem like he's hanging out with Cregan Stark for, by the way? Does it seem like they just met, or does this seem like guys who've been hanging out for a little bit?
I mean, I assume that Cregan Stark is not just like at the wall
Yeah.
hanging out. I assume they started, like down here, and then they were like, "Oh, let's travel up to." Like they started in Winterfell, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, let's go. Let's take a trip up to the wall, and
Yeah.
so
Lots
I
of
can show
small
you."
talk, right? Like, so
Yeah.
what do you do?
It
Uh
seemed like he was talking a lot, is what I'll say. It seems like
Cregan Stark.
he's a chatty Cathy, Cregan Stark.
Those Starks typically aren't either, so it is unsettling, in fact, to see sort of like it's just like chat, like gossipy, like a little hen, not a little direwolf. Cregan Stark.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. I really liked
They're
that
in,
we
yeah.
started up there. And the Starks feel very Starky, right? Like they're all about honor and duty, and we must look north from the wall.
Yeah.
There are darker things, and I can't help but think about how Game of Thrones proper kind of ruined that threat, but theoretically, it's very cool.
Well, theoretically, it's very cool. They reference one of my favorite passages from Fire and Blood, which is they mention Jaehaerys and his wife Alysanne going to the wall with their dragons, and that the dragons wouldn't go further than the wall. And the way that George R. R. Martin writes that in the book is really chilling and unsettling. But then you do think about how the White Walkers invaded and Jon Snow like fell asleep and they died anyway. So the sort of just like the threat level of them long term because of Game of Thrones makes them feel like this moment feels a little bit less weighty, except for this one tension, Taran. The secret tension of, is this show trying to do White Walker stuff? Are we White Walkering? We White Walkering here on House of the Dragon? How much are we White Walkering over here? We've done the Song of Ice and Fire. We heard about that in season 1, that like the Targaryens, we're not just power hungry. We're protecting the future. There's going to be things. We have a vision. It's going to happen. White Walkers. And we watched Game of Thrones kind of bears out. Is that going to be a thing that's going to be more prevalent on the show if we're starting the season at the wall, you think, Taran?
I don't know. There's definitely like
You want
allusions to
that?
it.
Like, do you is it something you'd want?
Not really.
Yeah, I know. I
What
know.
I wouldn't mind, and I usually would hate this.
Yeah, talk about the other tension up north. Says, well, look at that, Ben.
Oh boy.
Not wrong.
What I wouldn't mind is like a little bit of a retcon. Given that I feel that the end of Game of Thrones proper was really poorly done, I would not mind a little bit of a retcon on the White Walkers. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, that Night King, turns out he was really the Night
Yeah,
Prince.
yeah,
And
yeah,
his older brother's the real threat. Am I
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, they weren't actually that easily. You thought they were that easily defeated? Oh my, oh my. Oh, you're in for some trouble.
You thought the Night King was bad. Wait until you meet his wife. Here comes the Night Queen. Like bring
Yeah.
them all in, bring them down. You thought the Night King was bad. Wait until you meet his 12 infant children, the Night Babies. Like that was never even pulled off on this show. So I don't know. I don't know how this show could do that. I
don't think this one can. I think the Jon Snow show that is not to be was perhaps.
Well, I guess part of my brain is also still gravely impacted by the fact that for my sins, I can't quit The Walking Dead. And I've just watched The Walking Dead all the way through. And there's all this sort of like meandering franchise building that happens in the show from time to time where it feels like a thing that they're trying to set up that they're going to pay off someday. I just wonder if they're trying to like circle the wagons on the White Walker stuff to like rev us up for Game of Thrones Endgame in 5 years. I don't even know what that would look like, but it just felt very fishy to start at the wall.
I think that's fair. I think that I do think that this is kind of meant to give us a little bit of fan service, B, kind of set up Craig and Stark and the importance of like winning over some allies for either side. And so we'll see how much of an impact this has moving forward. But as you said, Jace is quickly kind of called back to Dragonstone. And so he's going to have to go back there. But Rhaenyra, in the meantime, is searching for her son's remains.
Yeah.
It's quite grim.
Emma Darcy has a single line of dialogue in this episode, which feels crazy because I feel like they were the best performance in the whole episode too. The scenes of Rhaenyra just watching from a distance, too afraid to go any further because if she does, she might have to confront the possibility that this isn't just a raven, that this is the truth. That scene of her on the beach, her walking back through the chamber through Dragonstone, just like really, really sold the emotional violence that is roaring in Rhaenyra right now. That would even bring her to the place that in this episode that Rhaenyra's one line of dialogue would be, "Bring me Aemon Targaryen. I want Aemon Targaryen." Like, this is still her family, right? This is her brother, like, this is still, and she's already there. So I think that a lot of work had to be accomplished to get us. I don't know. I don't think a lot of work had to be accomplished to get us to like understand where Rhaenyra is coming from, but I think some additional work has been done so that the people who support Rhaenyra can continue to feel a certain kind of way about supporting Rhaenyra on the other side of what Daemon has seemingly allowed to happen.
Yeah, can we talk about how Daemon is a very bad listener?
Horrible. Real bad.
Like, she had one line of dialogue in the entire episode,
Yeah.
and it was not a son for a son. It
No.
was Aemon Targaryen.
Yeah, I want Aemon Targaryen. And yeah,
And he was like,
really
okay, yeah, I
switched
got you, gotcha.
Uh,
How about the little baby boy though?
yeah. What is so he hires Blood. So he hires Blood thanks to the White Worm's got the connect. So the White Worm is back. White Worm's got the connect. Daemon goes in, hires Blood. He and Blood go and find cheese, and Daemon says, "So I've got so much money, a lot of it, that I will be so happy to give to you if you come back with Aemon Targaryen's head." And then they say, "But what if we don't find his head?"
That's good.
And Daemon says, ... We don't know, Taran. We cut away.
It's another like king for a day
mystery.
situation.
Yeah. What do we think? Can we try to Mad Lib it? You want to guess it? What did he say?
It's certainly implied that he was like, listen, if you can't find him, just get a son, right? Like that's how they interpret it.
Yeah. If the head is like, if there's like platinum blonde hair, it's a safe bet. Really,
Yeah.
even like a wig, probably, we're not going to be overly discerning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I definitely feel like it was implied that that was what he gave to them, which was a little weird because it was like, and I don't know, maybe this is going to be part of it. I don't know. I feel like my interpretation of Daemon as a character is that I don't think he wants Aemon to be killed by blood or cheese, right? Like, I think he wants to do it. I think he wants to take down Vhagar. And so when given the option, I think that like and maybe this was intentional, maybe not, but like I think it kind of works for his character that he was kind of like, I'm supposed to do this, but like, yeah, I mean, if you take out another one, is like, well, I tried, right? I got you this one.
More for me later. I mean, it does feel like Daemon is yes-anding Aemon Targaryen, right? Like Aemon Targaryen has eaten a prince off of a dragon. Yes. And we're going to go to King's Landing and kill Aemon Targaryen, but maybe actually kill a different Targaryen so that I can kill Aemon Targaryen later. Like, there just feels like the snowball is rolling downhill. And Daemon, for all of his many flaws, one of them, I think, would be a complaint that he spent too much time in the Septstones back in season 1, Taran. But we've seen him be like a shockingly competent warrior and a good tactician. Hot-headed, yeah. But I don't think that he's going here to King's Landing and doing something that he's... I feel like he knows what he's getting into. I think he knows what the possible blowback on something like this. And I don't think he particularly cares, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I did appreciate him telling Rhaenys, like, you could have just ended this whole thing, right?
Uh-huh, yeah. And I love Rhaenys, like, looks back at him like, bro, I read the comments. Okay? Like, I know what you think.
They really did have to, like, in the previously on.
I have my whole reason why I didn't do it. I can't speak on that until after the show. Once HBO allows me to speak and tell you my side of the story. For now, we'll just have to watch week by week and see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They really did have to remind me of that moment, and I appreciate that they are like leaning into it and not just ignoring it because it did happen. And so to have the other characters be upset with her for the decision, I think helps alleviate some of the frustration that I had with the scene. But they did also have to remind us of the like deathbed misunderstanding, which I still
Yes,
hate.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Luckily, like the motivation at this point has clearly moved on from it, but like, can we please just ignore that it happened? It's so unnecessary to
It's a
me.
little unnecessary. I don't disagree. I think that I actually thought that they did a decent job of resetting the stakes, even just
Mhm.
within the episode. I do think that the great Emily Fox and I loved the show Billions, and
Mm.
in the last few years, we really loved to watch Billions and not talk about it with absolutely anybody, because for us it was purely a vibes show. And when we tried to understand all of the crazy things they were saying, we couldn't follow anything that was going on. And Billions we just vibed on. And I think that there are a lot of people for whom House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones is a vibes show, Taryn. And I think like you could grok like, oh, well, those people don't like those people. Like that person just tried to kill that person's child. Like I'm pretty sure that person's team green, that person's team black. I feel like they did a really good job of reestablishing the emotional vibes of the characters. And like if you are leaning in and you're not doing this as an iPhone show for everybody else, I think that the dialogue was there, the writing was very clearly there. I think that they set up the family history and the family dynamics really well. Alicent is stressed. Helena seemingly knows things before they happen. We should talk about maybe. Aegon just wants to be a good king. Aemond is like aggro bro. Like you get all of these dynamics very cleanly, very clearly in this premiere, and I think that they launched us back into it as well as they probably could have.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed it. I feel like, I often crave a show that can sort of capture my full attention
Yeah,
and get me invested. And Game of Thrones certainly was that for me back in the day. House of the Dragon, I think, has certainly lived up to, I think, maybe not quite the height of Game of Thrones,
yeah,
but I do think that this episode helped get me back into the world and into the mood for more of this, because it worked. I was watching intently. I was feeling the tension. I was really like studying the characters and the interactions and how they were being portrayed and trying to like figure out their motivations
yeah.
and it worked for me.
Yeah. A couple more comments before we close out. We got this from Sammy. Sammy had written in and said, Allison lighting the candle for Luke made me feel slightly on her side. I really liked the way that the episode handled sort of these like respective separate remembrances for Luke. It was this reminder of this is messed up. All this sucks. This is a one huge family that's in like the worst Thanksgiving fight imaginable.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think and that's where I feel like that's what gets me feeling more for Alicent as opposed to like, oh well, she thought she was righteous about
Yeah.
the thing. And so I really enjoyed I enjoy anything that like will again like humanize these people. And I love the infighting between her and Otto about like, hey, don't undermine me.
Yeah.
And this sort of recognition that her children aren't really fit to rule. Like she
Yeah.
knows this. She's like, we just have to kind of wait it out and hope that their enthusiasm dies down so that we can take over and make things right.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know about that,
I don't know.
especially if one Laris Strong has anything to say about it.
Yeah, Laris out here just little fingering so hard, Taryn. Listen,
Yes.
let me just be frank. We're here on the YouTube. It's just the facts. Laris Strong, little fingering real hard. He's
I'll say it.
out of control.
This is the my favorite version of Laris so far. I feel like
You
we've
like it?
started on a strong footing for
Yes,
Laris Strong.
yes, yes.
And so
Strong night for the HBO Strongs, in fact, as Jeremy Strong has just won his first Tony Award.
oh boy.
So halfway to the EGOT, Taryn. You think he's going to do it?
I don't know.
He's got the Emmy, he's got the Tony, the Oscar's coming. How he gets the Grammy is really interesting.
I feel like that's a little tricky, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
L to the OG reprise, 10-year
there
anniversary
you go.
single.
There you go.
Not a bad shout. Could be good.
Um, I enjoyed the machinations here. This sort of like subtle wink to Allison that like, oh, I heard you were indisposed.
Yeah.
And then what I really enjoyed was after the sort of like meeting with the small folk, the ceremony, whatever. Aegon's walking through and Laris comes up and he's kind of like, "Hey, yo, that was so cool of you."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they
and
used to say such great things about, your grandfather. That was, like, really solidly a lot like what they used to say about him, like, really
yes,
wise, super chill. Like, Laris, like, was really cooking, and Aegon's like, "Okay, yeah, tell me more about that."
what
He
I
liked
liked about this is the initial look of disgust from Aegon. Of
it.
just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, this
yeah,
dude. Oh my
yeah,
god."
yeah,
Um, then through the work of like his little mumblings, he gets him to the side and he starts making some sense to Aegon and getting in his ear, which is such a great representation of like who this guy is as a
yes,
character. Like this is what he faces. He faces this look of disgust, and this is how he overcomes that in this world.
yeah,
And he's whispering sweet poisons, turning Aegon potentially against Otto.
yeah,
To what end? We'll have to see. But this is what I like seeing here in King's Landing.
yeah. 2 more things I wanna hit before we go for sure. New opening credit sequence, Darren.
I liked it.
So the tapestry, we're weaving.
It felt a little Wheel of Time to me.
Yeah. A little two wheel of time?
I think it
Like,
still
should
works.
Rafe, like, have, like, been on the phone with Bezos tonight and be like, "Jeff, just gotta tell you, you might wanna look at Max. I think we might have a case."
What I liked about it is that it brought me to this place where I was thinking about this in historical terms. Like these are like historical and the again, this is like a fresh reaction right off the episode. I literally just watched it. I did not have time to
Yeah.
like pause on the
Reprocess
frames
it,
and
yep.
catch exactly what was in the opening or anything like that. But this made me feel like, oh yeah, this is like the history of what happened, and this is like a legendary time period in this universe. That and this story will be told and retold for ages to come. And it will have a huge impact on where we eventually end up in Game of Thrones and potentially other shows.
Yep.
And so I like that. Like, I think the last season's being kind of about blood and the family tree. I think that worked, especially with the way that that season was structured. But this feels right to me for the impending war of like this is when fire and blood truly reign.
A little thing, but I really liked that when they did it last season and it was just the Game of Thrones theme again. And I think there was some, division there, like, oh, well, it's iconic and it makes it, it's like Star Wars was sort of the justification. And then I think there was another feeling of like a little lazy, right? Like, couldn't you like make an opening sequence that maps onto more appropriate Targaryen music? And like the only point where I really totally agreed with that was the opening crawl, like going through the city streets of old Valyria with the blood and everything happened so quickly that they had to do this really strange cut in the music track. I know Ariel of Crying Laughing was particularly agitated by that, and that's done now with the new tapestries. Like it's the actual Ramin Djawadi theme playing all the way through, no random cuts. So on like a very nerdy, like nitpicky level, I was happy about that. Um,
Mhm.
the only other thing that I really wanted to make sure we got into was the great actor Abubakar Salim has joined House of the Dragon this season. This is the dude who's chatting with the sea snake in this episode. And that's an actor that you and I and Grace really, really enjoyed once upon a time. So he's out with Corley's in Driftmark. This guy named, is it Alan? Is it
I'm not
Alan?
sure.
Is that the name? Did I catch the name
It did sound
Alan?
strange to me in that it felt like one of the like occasionally you'll run into just a regular name
Yeah,
in Westeros and you'll be like, "Oh, I thought it was supposed to
yeah,
be a little weird."
yeah. Welcome to Westeros, where we have Eddard, we've got Joffrey, we've got Rhaenyra, and that's Alan.
Yeah.
That's
Seems like a
Alan.
solid dude.
We got 2 Erics,
Yeah, but
uh,
Eric's at least spelled really I wonder if Alan is
yeah,
spelled really
yeah, yeah,
weird.
yeah, yeah. What's your
Like
guess?
Allyn.
Yeah, ALLL, like a couple more. So I love the actor. For those of you who never watched Raised by Wolves, I don't think you ever can now because it was purged from the internet. It's somewhere out there, but it was one of those Max casualties. And this guy was one of the main characters on Raised by Wolves, a show that Taran, you and I loved, Grace loved, and hyped to have him here. So it was very like briefly in there. Briefly in
Mhm.
there. Yeah. Getting a lot of Alan. It's Alan. Alan, you noobs.
Sorry,
Okay.
I was close. I was
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll
One
see.
out.
See how that goes. By and large, I really loved it, Taran. I'm really just happy to be back in Westeros. Westeros
Mhm.
is, are the Game of Thrones shows, especially over the last few years, have they been at the heights that they were when these shows first began? Possibly not. But I do think that they're always worthwhile to talk about. Like I think it always is loaded with so much to sink your teeth into, Taran.
I mean, I think about the thing about like them being at the heights of Game of Thrones is that for me at least, the height of Game of Thrones is kind of the height of television.
Yeah.
It was close to the peak. So the fact that it's potentially not there, but pretty good and kind of close is I think very solid.
Yeah.
It's still I think better than than most television out there right now. So that's exciting. I mean, I think one thing we do have to talk about is we've briefly touched on it, but what's going on with these rides?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's a
Like
good question.
Sir Kristen,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
especially like she's like, listen, we can't, we can't. And I was like, uh-oh, Allison, watch out. The
Yeah.
last time a woman told him this, things did not go well.
Did not go particularly well. But it like has this energy of like I'm trying to think of like what's like the classic sitcom example of it's like when like Niles and Cecilia started hooking up on The Nanny, I think. Where like, oh wow, this is the two opposites, and they're like, no one can know what we're doing. If anyone knew, they wouldn't know what to think of the narrative structure anymore. We were adversaries. Now we're doing it on the sly. So there's like a little bit of that going on with the Kristen and Allison stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that this is really interesting for her character because we know that she was set up to really be this rule follower.
Yeah,
And a lot of her frustration and resentment toward Rhaenyra was about how Rhaenyra just flaunted the rules.
yeah,
And a huge part of that was like lying about what happened that night with Kristen.
yeah,
And now we're seeing that that Alicent is dabbling
yeah,
in the Kristen pool.
yeah,
And what does that mean for her character? Is this like part of some secret shame? Is this like a part of a degradation of her presumed moral character that she feels for herself at least? I'm really interested to see sort of where we end up here.
yeah.
Where we
Me
go.
as well. You got anything else on this one, Taryn?
I think
Oh,
that's
we're
it.
back. We're back. And did you know that scripted TV is back here on RHAP? We know scripted TV. We have a whole lineup of shows throughout the week. We'll be getting back into House of the Dragon throughout the week. So here's a quick look at our schedule. We've got our We Know Game of Thrones podcasts that are going to be happening on Sunday nights. That's typically Taryn and Grace just popping by here for the first one. Monday, you'll get a Westeros kickback from Chappelle and Mari. The Tastemakers, Taryn. This week it's going to be you and me on the Tastemakers. You want to give a little taste of what the Tastemakers podcast is for anyone who hasn't heard of that one yet?
I mean, there are some big shows dropping. I think the biggest conversation right now that I'm seeing is about Star Wars: The Acolyte,
Mm-hmm.
which has debuted to disastrous user
Yeah.
reviews, audience reviews.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in sort of discussing that and talking about our thoughts. And then, of course, The Boys season 4 has dropped their first 3 episodes and announced that season 5 will be the final season
Yes.
for The Boys. So we'll chat about that a little bit. But the purpose of the Tastemakers, though we might be talking about these shows, But we will not be spoiling them in any way. If anything, if you don't watch the show, all the better. You'll find out a little bit about them. You'll be able to sort of like understand why people are talking about them, what they're saying about them. And we'll talk about plenty of other things as well.
So that's Tuesdays, the Tastemakers drop. So we'll be talking about The Acolyte and The Boys this week. TV for Real, that's Mike Bloom and Sasha Joseph talking to your favorite reality stars about TV in the scripted space every Wednesday. This week, they've got Bryce coming on to the podcast, Taran, to break down the blood and cheese of it all. Rob and I are going to be talking about Game of Thrones this week. Later in the week, we usually drop these on Thursdays. It's going to drop on Friday this week. And then we've got the weekend program to close you out on Saturday. So make sure you're subscribed. robhasawebsite.com/scripted has all of the intel on where to subscribe, the YouTube information. Everything is at robhasawebsite.com/scripted.
All right. Well, Josh.
Taran.
Episode 1 in the books. I'm excited. I feel like I'm hopeful for where we go with all of this in season 2. I feel like there are some heights that we can reach, and I'm excited. And also, let's just make sure this is
okay. Sure. No, I think it's fair. Should I put on a black hoodie instead? I've got it over here. If you could filibuster for another. No, let's not do it. We don't need to do another costume change live on the show. Very excited to see where things go next week. More House of the Dragon coverage coming this week, later this week. And that's it. It's great. I'm very excited to be back in Westeros, Taran.
All right. Well, you can always find me over on Twitch if you want to chat with me some more about whatever it is that you want to chat about. We'll have some fun over there. And I think that's about what we have. So thank you all so much for joining us here tonight. And we will see all of you next time.